Hi guys, just like to kick off now. Firstly, thanks everyone for coming along this evening. And just in case there are anyone who's mildly confused, this is the Design Sprint meetup group for Melbourne. And the main topic this evening is to discuss how design sprints can be implemented in really quite a large product organization with an existing fairly rich product set, how you actually can deploy and roll out design sprints in that kind of environment and make them effective. But just a very few quick words first. Elena and I are the organizers of the design sprint group here in Melbourne. You've already found our site, so please do, if you haven't already done so, join up. We are, and we strive to be, pretty open friendly. And it's really an open community for people who are interested in design sprints. It's a community of practice for people who use and design sprints in building products and rolling them out. I could go through and read in detail the code of conduct, which we are applying this evening, by the way. But I can briefly say that the main issue with our code of conduct is please don't be a dick, because we won't stand for it and we will chuck you out. So that's the code of conduct. We're all very nice here, very open. There are a few other bits and pieces about the group here in Melbourne. You've seen our meetup group. We do have a Twitter account, and we do use that to announce some of the events we have. And we do have our own website as well. It's just a landing page, but it does give you a bit more of detail about what we're up to, what the objectives are, and what we're trying to achieve with the group. Which is, of course, the evolution and the onward development of the design sprint approach. Initially, it started off for startups, but over the years, it's now become much more focused on larger product sets, larger organizations. Announcements. So I'm now going to hand over to Elena, as I'm doing all the talking and it's unfair.
So before we start with the talk today, we have two announcements to make. If you've been following us in the group, you might have received some sneak peek of what's going on. But after Design Sprint Camp Melbourne, after we did that in August, that was such a success that we are going to Sydney now. So on the 23rd of November, if you missed on Design Sprints Melbourne, but have the possibility to come to Sydney, you're welcome, very welcome to go to. Or if you want to contribute in any way, then let us know. And this is the website where you can see more information, sprintcamp.online. And the second announcement is that Design Sprints Melbourne is one of the 13 official chapters on the Google Design Sprint Kit website. So if you see the map, we can see there, and we're listed there. So our meetups are now available and announced in the Global Design Sprint chapters from Google. So a big shout out to everyone that contributed to being part of that community and being part of the initial Global Sprint chapters. And without further ado,
one last announcement. I'm just here to hand over to Stephen again.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephen. Having met a lot of you over past meetups, I know everyone's interested in design sprints, but maybe you haven't had a chance of actually implementing one at work or just in your day-to-day lives. So the idea is that we're going to get together a group of you and to work through a design sprint over a couple of weekends. The idea is we're going to do it in a few weekends' time, so you've got some time to clear your calendar. It will be Saturday, Sunday, based here in the city, and the cost will be quite minimal, maybe about $40 for the room hire. And so if you're interested, come see me afterwards, and we can take it from there. Thank you.
Another thing before we start with the talk is that we have a live feed now because of the Sydney Design. We set up the Sydney Design Sprinters group. So for anyone that is watching online, hello, can you wave to it? I don't know if they can see you on the camera, but anyway, people here are saying hello.
So yeah, so if there is anyone down there on Sydney, hello, and we're glad you've joined us. On which note, I'm now going to hand over to our team for this evening, Josh and Natal, and leave them to walk us through their experiences and the insights they've garnered from implementing a design sprint approach and a design thinking approach in a product organization. Perfect.
Just a second.
Oh, here we go. Yay. Natal.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Do we have this all day? Thanks. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight, actually. My name is Vital. I'm the head of UX design here. And this is Josh. He is the head of product. I just want to apologize. I feel like a bit like crap today. So everyone that asked me, why do you look so kind of, with low energy? It's because I'm a bit sick. So just please keep that in mind that I'm not cheerful as I usually am. So today we're going to discuss our journey of implementing design thinking in organization and design sprints as well. So I'll hand over to Josh and we'll kind of switch roles during this talk.
Awesome. So I wanted to start just with the PageUp journey so far. So this is going into the background of where PageUp came from and why we've decided to make the change that we've made over the last few months. So the background here, the transformation we put in place, we started working on it, specifically the process of things about 4 months ago. And before that, around the cultural side and the communications around it, a bit before that, I only joined the company 4 months ago. And we've gone live with that transformation about 7 weeks ago. So that's a bit of the background of where we're at. The background of PageUp itself, though, so hands up here, who had heard of PageUp before this meetup? Good. Heaps of people I hadn't heard about until I joined them. So PageUp was founded in '97, so that's 22 years ago. So they were one of the first Melbourne-based software companies and have been very successful since then. When they were founded, they were a nimble startup building custom-based software. From there, they started to grow, they started to build out for their specific customers, they started to expand into international markets and gradually increase their product set. So back in '97, they were the fastest player in the market. They were one of the first players that were essentially building software as a service. I think back then it was called application as a service or something like that. Then as the market progressed, a lot of other players started to enter into the market. So PageUp was working as a application tracking system or recruitment software. A lot of other players started to go, well, this market's pretty great, we're going to jump in as well. So there were other companies similar to PageUp and other companies, big enterprise systems who went, okay, well, we do payroll and human resource management. We can also do recruitment and application tracking as well. We're going to jump into the market. So suddenly PageUp is starting to see a lot of competitors jump in, a lot of other startups jump in who are also moving very quickly. And they were also now struggling with initially one person could be across the entire product set of PageUp, from everything from doing development through to sales and operations. They were now starting to experience that one person couldn't be across the entire product set because they were trying to expand to compete with all the other players coming to the market. And one person also couldn't be across all the different departments within the organization. So as a result, from the technology perspective, they split from having one person being across everything into individual feature teams. Now, these feature teams service specific modules within the platform. When I say modules, if you think about things like there's recruitment, there's learning, there's performance. So they service a specific module for a specific geography or industry. And they could do everything for that module of that geography and industry, and it worked. The buyers within that framework were buying for that specific module. The users were using that specific module. So those feature teams were operating successfully. But as things progressed over the years, so still PageUp majorly moving forward in terms of growth, one thing started to change.
the buyers started to change, the marketplace started to change. Buyers moved from HR specifically up to the CEO. Now, the CEO wasn't saying, well, I just want to buy recruitment software. They were saying, I want to buy the entire module set. I want to buy specific value that your company provides. And so as a result, we were starting to see a bit of pain coming into how we operated. So this pain, one of the big pains that we experienced, or that PageUp has experienced, was essentially a loss in competitiveness. So they went from 97, where they were the drivers of change. So when we talk about, you've got the external rate of change, so how quickly change is happening with your product set or what you provide the market, versus your internal rate of change, how quickly you're changing. So if you think about what's happening with a lot of organizations, a lot of the big organizations in various industries, a lot of them are starting to experience a situation where their internal rate of change is slower than the external rate of change. They're losing competitiveness. The same thing happened with PageUp, with how they were operating and how they were running the market. You had big players coming in, throwing tens of millions of dollars at the problem, and then you also had lots of little small players providing little point solutions, little radical innovation in that space, which now PageUp had to compete against all of this. So this is one of the biggest problems that with our transformation we're looking to solve, with engaging design thinking and design sprints we're looking to solve. The other challenge is just at a very high level. From a strategic perspective, obviously you have your retention, growth, and market. From a people perspective, we now had people, the alignment of how people were working with specific features didn't really fit to how they need to be aligned to the entire organization. And in addition to that, there's just the general alignment issue that I'm sure many people experience in organizations, where people find themselves, specifically when we talk about feature teams, where you have like your feature factory. I just get my instructions and I build my feature and I get it out the door. I don't actually know why I'm building that feature. I don't see how that's affecting the customer specifically. I'm not producing the end-to-end value. I'm just producing a component of that value. If you're only producing a component of value and the other components required to provide the end-to-end value are not being built, then it doesn't matter what you're doing if no one else produces our other components. Do you have a question?
No.
So, oh, by the way, any questions during this, please feel free to chuck your hand up in the middle. I'm always open to answer questions as we're working through. Another big thing we had is context switching. So with the length that this company's been operating, so starting in 97 as that custom software, they basically built this massive monolith code base. I always refer to it as like spaghetti code. So this spaghetti code is very hard to manage. In addition to that, you had lots of customers through legacy who had custom builds for how they integrated PageUp and how they used it. So not only do you have spaghetti code for the core of PageUp, you also had spaghetti code existing at each individual client, or a lot of individual clients, which all needed to be supported, as well as then all our partners that we integrated with as well. So as a result, any individual developer throughout the day is getting, hey, this is the thing you should be working on, but also you need to manage some maintenance, some spaghetti code over here, and there's some code over here you need to manage, and they're constantly switching their contexts all the time. The amount of waste that you get from that is massive. So if anyone's ever seen the context switching chart that shows the amount of waste in the system, if you're working on one thing, you're obviously 100% effective. If you're working on two things, I think the loss is about 20%. You're working on 5 things, which is generally what was happening at PageUp, the loss in productivity is 80%. So if you think about, if you've got 10 people in your development team and they're all working on 5 things each, you essentially have 2 people in your development team. So that's pretty significant. Another big thing which Littal's going to talk about in a second is we had no user research capability. I'm not going to talk about it in detail because Littal will cover off, but that's obviously a big issue. And then finally, there was no metrics focus, or at least there wasn't a focus on the right metrics for how the organization is going to run, which results in people not necessarily making the right decisions and certainly not at the right time. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Littal to talk about all of that in a bit more detail.
Thanks. Okay, so those were the pain points way before Josh joined and also before I joined. I joined the company 13 months ago. I actually brought Josh along with me. So we are an amazing team, and you will hear why in the next probably 30 minutes. So basically, I was brought into the business because we did have a UX design team, but the team was really focusing more on the visual aspect of things, not so much on the research, or basically non-research whatsoever. So all the research that we had here in the company was market research, some data usage, and CSAT surveys. So if you know what it is, it's a survey that we send to customers and we get their feedback. But really, this is not user research. So this was a huge pain point for the leadership team here, because they realized that without doing user research, we don't really know what is the biggest problem that we need to solve, right? And we also don't really have validation of the products that we're building. So lucky for me, I joined the company, and my job was really to enable alignment and autonomy with the teams, and mostly elevating research and experimentation. And we'll talk about experimentation soon. This is really my favorite step in the process of design thinking. So what have I done? So like I said, I joined the company 13 months ago. The first 1 or 2 months, I basically spent the time with talking to as many people that I could, right? Because design thinking, as you know, is not one size fits all. Sorry, I need to stand here. So I was basically doing design thinking to be able to implement design thinking in the organization. So I talked to all the people here, all the product managers, all the tech leads, all the UX designers, and mostly to the leadership team and people from sales, implementation, support, and so on, to really understand what is their pain points when working with UX or when not working with UX, and find the gaps. So I did find a lot of pain points, many pain points, as you would imagine. And it's not really unique to PageUp. This is very common in businesses that started in '97 without designers or even without product management capabilities. But going through design thinking processes, I defined all the pain points to the 2 core things or 2 core opportunities that I was able to do something about. So those 2 were define the role of designers in the business, because again, people really didn't know what the role of a designer is, and demonstrate the importance of user research. How many people here are designers, by the way? And how many of you are doing mostly, or being expected to do mostly visual design? Only Brandon. You're very lucky, by the way. Except for Brandon. Sorry. Cool. So those were my opportunities. So what have I done to try and solve it? Which I did actually. So an opportunity arose probably 2 months after I joined, which was like exactly the perfect time for me to do something about it. So my manager at the time, the CPO, came to me and said, look, we didn't have an opportunity to do our bi-yearly hackathon, but we still want to invest in something. So we have 2 days that we can do something. What do you think? Do you want to offer something? What do you think that we can do? So I kind of thought about it and I said, well, of course, what we should do is to do a design sprint, a mini design sprint of 2 days, and get everyone in the business experience in the design sprint. So the idea was basically that, taking 2 days, yes, this is not the Google design sprint, so apologize, but this was still a design sprint and still going through the process of a design sprint. So because we only had 2 days, day 1, we wanted to invest in everything to do with research. So the empathize and define, well, basically the first diamond. And day 2, to focus on the design and experiment and test our ideas. So the organization of all of that was huge, right? So this is kind of my tip to you. If you want to do that in your businesses, and I really encourage you to do that, Brandon, especially you. If you have an opportunity to do something, even if it's a half a day or 1 day or whatever you can get from people, go and do it. The important thing is to make sure that you are organizing everything. So when you actually go to those days, you are awesome, spot on. Everyone knows what is expected of them, and everyone knows what they need to do. So the first thing was communication and communication and communication. So I ran Hour of Power here in this space. telling basically everyone in the business why we're doing that and why they have to come, and not have because we force them to come, but because it's going to be a great experience for them. I had to go to the leadership team and tell them, please let your people take 2 days off and invest this time in actually going through those days, because they will get so much out of it and you will get so much out of it as well. So if you think that once you communicate with people, they actually get what it is, so they don't. So you need to do it over and over and over and over again, especially people that have never done a design sprint, or they actually don't know what it is and what do you want from me, and leave me alone. And when I send a calendar invite, they're like, who are you and what do you want? Again, it was 2 months in the company. So doing tons of communication, I set up this beautiful Trello board. Really like it. This is why I put it here. And also put in the what and the why and the how and the when, so people will have access to all the information that is relevant for those 2 days. And we have this problem space as well. And Trello is super easy. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. And I ask people, if you have a problem space that you want to try and solve during those 2 days, please put your problem statement here. So of course, what most people have done, put their ideas there instead of the problem space, and that was 100% fine, because this is what most people will do. And my job was to help them to kind of structure their idea into a problem statement, or actually, what do you think is the problem that you're trying to solve with your idea? So we had a pitch day, or a pitch hour, let's say. So all the people that put ideas here came and said, this is my problem. Or they said, this is my idea, and we helped them kind of rephrase it into a problem statement. Or they came and spoke about their problem and got other people to join them, and together they formed a group. After that, we had, for each group, we had a team lead. And I worked with those people kind of to tell them exactly what's going to happen during those days, and especially around the research side of things. Because, of course, in one day, you can't conduct research and define and analyze and do everything, right? So we wanted to use with what we can. And sorry, I didn't mention it, but our design sprint, all the problem statement were internal problems, which was great for me. Because first of all, we had access to all the people that are here. We also have teams that are remote, and we also had access with them. But why it was so good is because that really demonstrated the design thinking is not just when we want to design a product or a feature. It's actually a great tool that we can use for internal issues as well. So I, as a team leads, to think about the research that they want to do, which was basically interviews and surveys. And I asked them before the sprint itself, go and send the survey so you can have and get all the responses, and then you can analyze and make decisions on the day itself. And also book some time with people so they know that you're going to interview them, which they've done, which was really, really good as well. So this is kind of a sneak peek of what we have done. This is really a few photos from those 2 days, which was a really great experience. Right, Caitlin? Where is she? Yes, yeah, Caitlin is happy. Great. So basically what we end up having, so PageUp overall had 200 employees, roughly, today probably a bit more. We had 108 people from across the business participating in this design sprint. I'm very proud of this number. We had people, all the UX designers, of course, participated, all the product managers as well. Most of the devs, we had people from sales, from marketing, from implementation, from support. Let's see if I found someone else. From finance, look at that. So we had people from all the teams across the business working together and trying to find solution to their problems. So we had 12 teams working on 12 different problem spaces. And we had 3 different locations. So if you can see from the photo here, which this is me, and this is our team in Manila. And also, if you can see here, I don't know if you see it, but we had 4 different locations as well. And this team was actually trying to solve the remote communication between teams, which was great. And the fact that they were all remote, or most of them were remote, was really, really helpful for them to find, well, to interview one another, but also to find the best solution that actually work for them. Yeah, we had 3 locations and we had 5 facilitators, which is not a lot for 12 teams. So this is a big pain point that I had because I had to, run around and switch my time between the different teams and give them support. So I would say from my learning is try to have a facilitator per team. And this was kind of my biggest feedback that I got as well. But even with the 5 facilitator, I think it was pretty successful. And we have like thousands of Post-it notes, as you can see here. So yeah, the day one especially was super successful. All the teams that were doing research, you could see them interviewing each other, going and talking to each other, doing the defined side of things as well. And really trying to get into the UX researcher and designer's shoe. This is our winning team. Look, they got small trophies and half a day off and some budget to actually go and party. But the reason why I put this photo here is this winning team didn't have a UX designer or a designer at all in their team, which basically and they've done a great process and a great collaboration. But for me, it actually shown that design thinking is something that every single person can adopt. And design sprints as a tool, something that everyone can do. You don't need a designer to do that. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of hurting designers' feeling here. Our job is really to enable that and create collaboration and communication and to get people to understand what our job is. And to get everyone to practice UX, right? I think today a lot of people in the industry say there is no UX designer. We should all change our name to product designer. We haven't done it yet. And I think the reason is because, and I truly believe in that, everyone practice UX is really not just for designer, and our job is to enable that. So key learnings, and the key learnings are for the audience that participated in the sprint. First of all, awesome learning. What we thought was the problem wasn't actually a problem. That was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, you made my day, great. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted people to understand that we are making assumptions basically on everything that we do, right? If we're not talking to the relevant people when we're trying to solve their problem, we just don't know. We can make great assumptions, but there are still assumptions until we go and actually speak to those people. And the fact that people came and told me that, and this was the #1 learning from all the people, because I sent a survey after and I asked them to tell me what was the biggest learning for them. That was awesome. Yeah, it kind of really helped me to demonstrate why we are super important. The second one, which I already mentioned, is that design thinking is not an exclusive property of designers, and that's a tool that every single person can adopt as a creative tool to solve problems. Key achievements, that's key achievement for me and my team. So design is now its own function. When I joined the company, design was under product. Probably 2 weeks or a month after I've done the design sprint, I was able to get ourselves outside of product. And now we are equal to product. Yay. For me, that was a huge success, right? And most companies, UX or design is still under product. No longer here. We are now in a senior leadership level, which is great. I got budget for research capabilities. I was able to recruit my first lead UX researcher, Rowan. He's over there, and he's the best in the market. And budget to get some research tools so we can actually go and conduct the research, right? And the third one is new customer-centric product development processes that now Josh will take you across it.
Thank you. So with that what does a transformation look like? I'm going to talk about the transformation as a whole first, and then talk about the process that we've then implemented, because the process, a big part of the process in itself is actually the transformation to enable the process. Because you can't simply go, hey, here's a process, go and do it, and expect it all to work out. There's a whole lot that then goes into that as well. So like I said, I joined the company 4 months ago. I joined a day before the announcement that we were going to be doing the transformation. So on the first day, no one actually knew who I was. I was told to sit in a corner and not tell anyone. I wasn't introduced to anyone because my role didn't really exist until the transformation took place. So on day 2, they said, okay, we're doing a transformation. This is Josh, this is his role, and he's going to be helping us on the process side of the transformation and helping with what we're going to be doing. And so just as a high level, what are the components of a transformation when you want to get a organization essentially running this full design thinking process? So when we talk about design sprints, we essentially now have a process where design sprints and design thinking is embedded into the product development approach that we're running. So from a transformation perspective, we've got a change in strategy, change for people, and also a big change in process as well. Now, a big part of that, equal to strategy and process within people, is our focus on culture, team structure, and capability uplift. Now, all of those equally as important as our change of process and strategy. Organizational culture, arguably the most important. Luckily at PageUp, already an incredibly good culture here, but obviously needing to take a specific focus to ensure that we both maintain and improve upon the culture as we move forward. So first thing I'm going to talk about just quickly is investment strategy. So that's as a component strategy. Investment strategy was a big thing that we need to look at. If you remember before, we spoke about the internal versus external rate of change. And we spoke about all the process cost that was being incurred in terms of context switching, in terms of managing the spaghetti code. So a big part of that was the investment strategy. And this linked into the structure itself. So I use this diagram to talk about the investment strategy. This talks about the different types of innovation. So you've got incremental or evolutionary innovation, which can kind of be lumped together. Essentially, if you think about most innovation or most product development you see in organizations, it's generally focused around what are our existing offerings, who are our existing users, how do we incrementally change these offerings? Everyone's kind of familiar with that, right? So an example of that could be you've got a customer, they're using an existing platform, and they're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you also had this function, right? That's generally incremental innovation, right? It's generally going to help potentially retain your existing users. Potentially it's focused on bringing on new users, or potentially in creating new offerings within your existing user base. But it's all incremental, right? At PageUp, 100% of the product innovation fell into this category. And I would argue probably in most organizations you see, it all falls into this category of the type of innovation that's done. Now that's good, especially if you're doing it at pace, right? In terms of maintaining your external rate of change. If you can do this faster than all the competitors in the market, that's still going to be good. You're going to maintain your market share. But what it doesn't address, and so what we have done from part of our process is accelerating that. So we want to accelerate our incremental and evolutionary innovation so that we're moving faster than all the competitors in the market and maintaining that market share. What that doesn't necessarily address is revolutionary innovation and disruptive innovation. That's always happening in the market. And at any time, you could have some player come in with something that completely revolutionizes how the market operates and knocks out your operating model, right? So if you're not focused on revolutionary innovation at all, then you have a major potential for loss there. That said, it's very risky. Revolutionary innovation, where you're focusing on new users and new offerings, no matter how much research you do and no matter how well you do your approach, can still be quite risky. There's the potential that you do that development and it falls completely flat, which means everything you've invested turns out for nothing, right? Because of the nature of revolutionary innovation. That said, that means that you still need to do it. You just need to do it to a certain percentage. So with accelerating the approach, and I'll talk about structure in a second of how we actually manage to do that, the other side of that is then enabling the revolutionary innovation by saying, for all of our product teams that are working on incremental innovation, how many of them are focused on enabling revolutionary innovation, or what percentage of their investment is enabling revolutionary innovation? Arguably, that's going to be a relatively low percentage, again, because you still need to invest the majority of your investment in maintaining and growing your existing business, depending on where your market is at. And in this instance, arguably, PageUp do need to start increasing that investment, which is what we're looking towards doing. Next, a big part of what we've been focusing on is culture. So the culture of PageUp, already amazing, already fantastic culture here. And I say that not just because I'm marketing PageUp or anything like that, but it truly is, it was an amazing culture. I came here and I was very, very impressed. That said, it was something we still need to focus on there. One of the things, if you're ever in an organization where everyone's really nice, as is the case at PageUp, one of the failings of an organization where everyone's really nice is that they can tend to shy away from things like conflict or holding each other accountable because they don't want to hurt each other's feelings, which is nice, but can lead to some unintended consequences in terms of a lack of productivity or not actually getting to the right outcome fast enough because they don't have the right conflict or the right conversations. So with the focus on culture, I'm just going to bring up one of the things that came up. Anyone ever done values in their way? They ever said, oh, we're doing organizational values. We're doing team values. And it was like, throw some words out. So it's like integrity. What about honesty? Oh, we're going to be innovative. I'm like, yeah, obviously. No one's like, oh, we're going to be the organization where we cheat, steal, and we don't innovate on anything. That's our value, right? Obviously, you're going to do these types of things. Those aren't the types of values that you can really get behind because they're just words, right? They're words that are obvious, right? And they're not contextual. They don't apply to a specific team. So with our transformation, the entire organization, the entire product development team moved to value streams. So the teams changed completely. And so what we did is we ran an exercise with each of the teams for them to discover what were the values that were going to be important to them that they could really get behind and that could really help them move forward as a team and not only maintain the strong culture that exists at PageUp, but expand and improve upon it. So this is an example of one of those such values. So we choose to have difficult conversations and put our team's well-being above our own discomfort, right? That's very specific, it's targeted, and it's specific, that's the team it came from. This is unique to that team. There's no other team had a value like this. It was unique to them and for what they felt that that team needed to work on in order to improve and become stronger and work well together. So I'm not going to talk about this too much because this is an entire 1 hour long talk in and of itself. But in a sense, what we did was we focused on the 5 dysfunctions. What we did is we facilitated workshops and very open discussions with the team to go through and talk about psychological safety in terms of trust and vulnerability, working through fear of conflict and the lack of commitment, which you can often see, and avoidance of accountability, and then finally inattention to results. So focusing on the right metrics to move forward as an organization. And through these open discussions, we were able to come up with all the various values that were important to that team and then fine-tune down to what are the ones that we wanted to focus on for each individual team, which you can see, I think some of the posters around the office now in each of the teams, there's a few up on the wall. Each of the teams have now printed those out, chucked them up in their area where they've got, these are our values. Now these will change and grow. So as we progress, as the transformation progresses, as the team matures, we're going to be looking back, having these conversations again. How have the last few months gone for us? What are these values do we need to change? What do we need to focus on more strongly to gradually ensure that we're constantly evolving and focusing on organizational culture? Last to talk about is structure. So when we spoke about accelerating the incremental and evolutionary innovation before, and one of the big things that was an issue for us was context switching. So a big thing that we changed was the structure. So we set up our value streams, which was focused on specific value that provided end-to-end value to our customers. So as opposed to your classical team, which might be your developers, designers, and product managers, we have included in our teams as well as dedicated team members, sales, marketing, ops, and support, right? So every single team now have the capability and the remit to provide an end-to-end value to the various different customer segments, geographies, and industries. Right, so that's how it's been set up. One of the major things we've done as well is we've set up one team. I spoke about that spaghetti code and the support issues that were coming in left, right, and center as the nature of a long-running company with many different customers, many with custom builds. We now have dedicated one team that's then focused on doing that. And so they're shielding the rest of the product teams to then focus on product innovation, right? So that's one of the biggest changes that's been done within the structure that's enabled that to occur. And the next thing, capability uplift being a very big part of this. I'll let Tal talk about this.
Yes, so we made the decision to change the structure of the team, right? And we wanted to implement a new process. But in order to do that, we had to make sure that we're upskilling everyone in the business to actually be able to take those new methods and new processes and to do something about them. So what have we done? We invested a lot in training with a third-party agency. That was kind of my task to do. It was actually just before Josh joined us, but he was actually able to be part of this training itself. So my job was to find a great provider that can uplift our capabilities. And I worked really close with them as well to make sure that we are aligned with our new processes. So everything that we wanted to implement, they were able to, in a very good, great facilitation way, to make sure that they are upskilling everyone in the business. So here you can see some of our team members. That was product development and UX. We had 40 people from, again, we're a 200 people company. We had 40 people going through 4 days of training to uplift their capabilities. And the great thing about it is that usually when you do something like that, most companies will send their UXers and product managers and say, they can handle that, that's their job. Developers, no, they don't need to, they need to code. But here we were able to bring all the team lead, all the tech leads, and all the senior developers as well. So yeah, we couldn't bring everyone because we did have to have some people here and actually, build stuff. But again, 40 people from our department was huge. So what they've learned was, first of all, exploratory research. Yeah. So everything to do with talking to the user and asking them the right questions. And the right questions are mainly a lot of why. Why? Really kind of to dig deep and to understand, basically their jobs to be done, right? So we are investing and changing the way we do research to identify jobs to be done of our users. Like I said before, we didn't have user research capabilities. We did have, and we do have, salespeople, implementation and support. They have a lot of communication with our customers, but the people that they communicate with are the buyers and the super users and not actually the end users. So this was all about how can we talk to those end users and really understand what they need to do, what are pain points, and what are the opportunities that we can basically give them the best solution. So yeah, great, 4 days of investment, but that's not all, because we cannot have just people that are, basically designing and building the product to do that. We need to make sure that we have both top down and bottom up the same understanding, right? So people from the leadership team are aligned with the new structure and the new process, and enabling everyone to behave like that. Also, as according to what Josh said before, our cross-functional teams are not just developers, product and UX. They also involve people from marketing, from sales, from implementation, from support, and so on. So everyone had to go through this training. So as you can see here, we have a leadership team here. This guy here is our CEO. Our CEO went to this training day, 2 days actually of training. I was super proud, by the way, of that. And they love the training. For them, that was like a mind change completely. You can go now to different part of the business and we'll say something like, oh, job to be done. Oh, we need to do experimentation and so on, which is great. So like I mentioned, day one was around experimentation. Day two was around ideation compared to brainstorming. How can you develop tons of ideas and to make the decision what the right idea or the most valuable idea to go through into experimentation. I want to extend a lot about experimentation. This is, like I said before, my favorite phase. I have another talk on that. We'll do it another time. So that was day 3, and the last day was how can we take all of that and have good communication with the rest of the business. So kind of stakeholder management, how do we use conflict to our advantage? How can we communicate it in a really good way? So as you can see here, by the way, this is our Manila team, and this is me doing this training for them. So I jump on the opportunity to take my knowledge from the training and to share it across the business. So I went to Manila and had this training with our guys in Manila, mainly developers and 2 product managers. In January, I'm going to go to the US and to Singapore to have the training with them as well. So I'm very lucky. Also important to mention that the teams in the US and in Singapore are mainly customer-facing people. So they are mainly sales and implementation and so on. So the training should be really around their needs and how they can find value and how it's going to help them work better with customers and with us as well. Yes, sorry. So one of the things that we're doing now, we basically had this training for our team about 2 months ago, right? No, it sounds like that. And with the leadership team about a month ago. And now we are taking the time, mainly Josh and myself, and also Ron, to have this training for everyone across the business. So it's not enough for people to do the training once and then tell them, okay, now go and do that and go through the process and embrace the process. And of course, you know what to do. It doesn't work like that, right? People need a lot of support, a lot of coaching, a lot of help when they need to use a new process. So basically, we spend most of our time today, or I spend most of my days doing workshops over workshops over workshops, with each one of our product teams, and also with other teams across the business. Actually, just today, Warren and I had a workshop with our pre-sales team. They reached out to us and asked us for help with ideation, which was great, right? This is what you want. You want people from across the business to understand the value of design thinking, to understand the value of ideation, experimentation, and mainly around research and validation as well. So again, because we had this transformation 6 weeks ago, we started that. Now we are in a very interesting phase, basically. So we changed the process that Josh will take you through the process itself, each step of the process, which is really interesting and exciting. And our job is to give them as much support as possible. So to be here for them and enable them to do what they need to do in order to embrace the process and build awesome things quickly and with validation, right? So lean experimentation, lean methods is a huge thing for us as well. Cool. So I'll hand over to Josh again.
Thank you. So I'm very, very excited to talk about the process and approach. This is, in my opinion, as it would be, one of the best approaches to product development. This is extremely lightweight, very, very quick process with incredible validation throughout the system to ensure we're only ever lifting our finger to do the most valuable piece of effort at any given point in time. So with that, it does follow the design thinking approach, and you'll see where it matches to the design sprint as well, and I'll walk through that in a second. So your classic double diamond, you've got your general problem, discovering through to your specific problem, and then ideating through to your specific solution. So with that, breaking it down into a bit further, because this helps me walk through the process. So your first diamond is essentially finding the problem we're solving. So from your general problem, what are all the specific problems you could be working on? Then what's the most valuable problem that you should then take through to ideation? Then from there, discovering the solution worth investing in. What are all the most valuable solutions you could be working on? And of those, what's the one that you think you should be taking forward to further investment? And then sort of splitting the second diamond into two. With that specific solution, what are all the different ways you could be delivering it? So what are all the different features? Is it going to be a mobile app? Is it going to be a website? Is it a change in process or support, whatever the case may be? And then what is the slice of that we're going to take through and deliver first to customers? So what's your essentially a minimum viable product as our definition of it is. So it provides value to customers and is sustainable that you can take forward and deliver to market as quickly as possible to start getting feedback in and then iterating as quickly as possible. So it's that development, that design stage, that's sort of when you sort of leave the design sprint circle process and then move into, if you think about the last two steps of your design sprint of being prototype and test, That's essentially then happening at the design of the solution that works. That's happening constantly. You're constantly prototype test, or build, measure, learn, if you think about it from a lean startup perspective. So with that build, measure, learn, the purpose segue there. So if this is all about building the right thing, so finding out what we should be building, this is about building the thing right. So how do we go, okay, we've got the thing we want to build, how do we get that out to market as fast as possible, and how do we ensure that every time we lift our finger to touch this product or service, we're doing the most valuable thing? So this is where we talk about the lean startup approach of build, measure, learn. So build it, understand what metric you're trying to affect, or really that's what you want to be doing first with your hypothesis, building out your prototype or your product itself, and then getting it out to customers as fast as possible. So every solution we're going and taking the thinnest slice, getting out to customers, and then gradually iterating through and working collaboratively. We spoke about before with the value streams, having all the right people in the room. And when we talk about this, that does include having customers in the room as well. So when we jump into the process itself, just going through it again, you've got at the very beginning of the process is the trigger point. Now, the trigger point's really important. This is about understanding what is all the market research we have coming in, who are all the competitors, what are they doing, what is our customer research telling us, what are our salespeople telling us as they're going out to clients, and clients are asking for different things, and then going, okay, of all of this information, what is the most valuable general point that we can potentially be focusing on? From there, we're going, okay, we're not going to go, okay, well, 10 customers said they wanted e-signatures. Okay, we'll build e-signatures. That's not the case. 10 customers said they wanted e-signatures. They're all very valuable customers and very valuable potential opportunities. This is a more valuable area we could be focusing on than anything else. Okay, what's the problem space we're looking at? Well, they're trying to get offer acceptance working. Okay, what can we do? What's the offer acceptance space look like? And that's when it goes over to Lital and to Rowan, and they start doing their user research and problem discovery to understand what is the problem we're solving in this space. And that's where we then go, okay, from there, we go through what are all the individual pain points or problems we can be looking at, what's the most valuable one that we're going to take through to ideation. And that's when we get to ideation and experimentation. The ideation workshops we're running, we're including people from all across the organization in these workshops. So we're constantly changing who the people are who are attendees of these sessions. And we're also, where possible, including customers and other people who are involved in the system. So there might be our customers, might be our partners as well. So we partner with organizations like LinkedIn and Seek, obviously being related to recruitment. Can we bring people from those organizations in as well to work with us to build out what solutions are going to work for this system? From there, we're going, okay, of all of our ideas, you can see the light bulbs there. What's the most valuable one that we want to take through to experimentation? That's when we get to do the really fun stuff. Anyone's familiar with the experimentation, that's building out your mock websites. One of the things we've just done is a classic experiment of putting a button on the website for a specific feature, which has nothing behind it, and seeing if people are actually going to engage with it, whether they want to use that feature at all, right? So it's these kinds of things we're working through. And then from experimentation, we're getting the results and validating or invalidating a solution. Once we've ideally validated a solution, it then becomes from an unvalidated solution, becomes a validated solution, which we then prioritize for investment to go through to development. And it's at that point in time where we're designing the solution that works and working through to taking it out to customers as fast as possible and then iterating based on feedback. Now we have this entire process. This is a very high level one they can present. This actually breaks down into like an 80-step process where we specifically talk about what are the templates and tools we're using all the way through. Now this is all recommendation for the teams. It's not saying you have to do this. Although at this point in time, in terms of transformation and making it work for PageUp, we said, okay, we're going to kind of rote learn the process, work with you, and then run retros to inspect and adapt the process for each individual team and see what's going to work best for them. But initially, we have a relatively prescriptive process for the initial transformation, but understanding that then we adapt that as we move through. So this is the detail of it. So we have the explore and trigger, which was that very start there, problem discovery and ideation, through to pre-development discovery, initial plan development, go-to-market, and iterate. Now, if we look at the process there, so your problem discovery, ideation, experimentation, that's essentially like your design sprint there. That's running your design sprint at each stage. And then your development and launch, that's your build, measure, learn loop. Like I said, your last two steps of a design sprint where you're running constant experiments. Every time you're delivering product out to market, that's an experiment in and of itself, essentially. So the last thing I want to talk about here, just in terms of the process itself, which is really important, is that we have that constant prioritization. Because of the way that we're running this process, there's always a heap of opportunity that we can be working on. how do we ensure that at any time we are working the most valuable thing? And that's why we have this very open and transparent prioritization approach, where we're always going, how do we prioritize which general problem goes through to find the problem we're solving, goes through to research? How do we prioritize which specific problem goes to experimentation, which specific problem goes to ideation, which unvalidated solution goes through to experimentation, and finally, which validated solution goes through to development. So we've got a full prioritization framework that we work, again, which is very lightweight and very easy for the teams to use, and it's open to the entire organization. So one of the things, especially from a product management perspective, you often hit up against is people like, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing this for me? I had a customer yell at me today, I want you to build this feature, right? And this is a constant thing, especially with a lot of organizations who are dealing with very large customers. So when you've got B2B like PageUp does, where there's customers like this customer's worth $1 million, right? They said do X, you need to do X, right? So how do you have that conversation? How do you make it transparent so that the salesperson, when I say to them, no, they don't go, Josh, he's an idiot. Why do we bring him on? He doesn't know what we need. They can say, okay, no, look at the prioritization framework. What do you want me to do? They're like, oh, well, actually, while I said this, I can see based on prioritization that the top thing over here is actually what we should be working on. And everyone in the organization can easily understand and at the very least have a very constructive conversation about what happens next for the organization and how we progress and move forward. With that, one thing I'm going to speak about quickly is the end of the process, experimentation with incremental delivery and pace. How does that work? So I walked through this process before and talked about success goes to those who learn the fastest. This approach, how do we learn the fastest? Once we've picked up a validated solution, so we've run our experiments and said, yeah, this looks like the right thing to take forward. The very first step before we move forward is go, okay, for this solution, we've done some experimentation, which is very lightweight. Are there any other assumptions that exist within this product or service that might prove false, right? And if this assumption proves false, does that kill the product? So is it a piece of technology that I'm looking at using where potentially it doesn't integrate with the rest of the platform? Or maybe it's going to be too costly to run. Maybe my channel to market, how my customers are going to discover this product, is this actually isn't correct, right? And people will actually never discover that this new product or feature that I've implemented is actually going to get into customers' hands. So the first thing we do, I spoke about pre-development discovery, is the first step after it's been prioritized for development, is going, what are our risk-based assumptions and how can we test them as quickly as possible in order to take the next step and move through to planning. It's at planning, that's where we run what's called a rapid inception, where we basically break down the cards into all its individual parts. Interestingly, Guy, who's in the room here from IRIS, is the person that taught me how to do this, which is fantastic. And basically breaking down what are all the individual cards that make up, or individual stories that make up this piece of work. We run it over the course of a 4-hour workshop. And then from there we go, okay, of all the individual story cards that make up this product, what's the smallest slice, the smallest group of story cards that we can develop that provides sustainable customer value that we can take out to market as fast as possible. And from there, we're breaking down to what are all the individual releases thereafter. What that means is you could do that first release, which ideally takes you 2 to 4 weeks, and never do anything else again. Because you take it out to market and customers are like, yep, that met our needs, don't do anything else. Or they're like, yeah, this actually doesn't meet our needs. Don't do this product at all. Go back to the drawing board, take it back, roll it back, whatever the case may be. You're trying to do that as quickly as possible. Now, with all of this, metrics are the ultimate boss. So what I mean by this is that we can't know the success of what we're doing unless we have the right metrics in place. So we've got the metrics dimensions that matter to us. So at the very top here, you've got your benefits, and I'll talk about that in a second. So benefits metrics, those are the things that are benefits to us as an organization. So in terms of, say, revenue and growth, but there are also benefits to our customers. So the benefits to our customers, so from the PageUp perspective, is what they're trying to achieve. So from a recruitment perspective, it could be their time to hire, right? How quickly can they hire things? It could be their application rate. So for how many applications does it take for them to find the right candidate? So how many applications to look at? How efficient is their recruitment process? So all of these are the benefits that we're tracking to see the success of the products that we're getting out to market. On the other side of that, which is relevant to us, is all of our delivery metrics, which we're tracking to ensure that we're constantly evolving our delivery approach. So from an output perspective, how quickly we're getting stories out. So it's just how many we're getting out, how long it's taking, what's the cycle time for getting each story out, each epic out to market. From a speed, how fast does it take from the minute that we start something, how fast are we getting it out to market? From a cost perspective, that's cost not just about how much cost does it cost us to build, but it's also around maintenance costs as well, right? So we're tracking all of this to ensure that we're constantly optimizing the system. Predictability is a really interesting one. So predictability, anyone do story estimation at their work? They're trying to figure out how long, yeah, a few people know in their heads, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to go, how long is it going to take us to get something out the door? The purpose behind that is how well can we plan? Now, we're not doing estimation in terms of stories because that really doesn't work anyone who does it. But what does work is going, are we breaking down cards the exact same way every single time? Yes, we are. Okay, how long does it take us to get through, say, 20 cards? And from there, we're using what's called Monte Carlo forecasting, a mathematical model, to enable us to get more predictability. Initially, as we're up and running at the moment, the predictability is pretty off. So we can say, well, it's going to take us, this epic's going to take between 10 and 50 days, right? It's not very predictable. So what that means is if I've got 2 epics, I say, well, epic 2 is going to finish anywhere between 20 and 100 days from now. Okay, sales team, you can sell it only in 100 days from now, which is really difficult for them. And it really reduces your ability to plan and figure out when's the next time you need to do research, when do you next need to do ideation, find your next rapid inception. So with our predictability approach now, as time progresses, our predictability is going to improve and improve and improve to the point where we're going to say, okay, well, this epic is going to take us between 10 and 20 days. That's a lot more reasonable, a lot easier to manage. And the last one there, which is very relevant, we spoke about the monolith spaghetti code, is around sustainability. So if I'm adding to that spaghetti code and building more inside the massive code base that is the monolith, or building something that's just not really built in a very good architectural fashion, the result is that the next time I want to build something, it's going to take me longer. It's going to be more difficult to add to the system. So sustainability is all about how do we reduce that spaghetti code, ideally remove it completely, and everything new that we build is built in a sustainable way so that every time, and as time progresses, each time I need to build the next thing, it's faster again and faster again and faster again. So as we move through the system, as we take this approach, this transformation approach, and this approach to development, while today our cycle time might be 2 weeks, in 6 months' time, our cycle time ideally gets down to a week. So we're gradually pushing things out the door faster and faster and faster. Yes.
I was just wondering, do you have prioritization or like a conversation about trade-off between different metrics as well?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the prioritization framework itself.
Right.
Right, yeah. So the prioritization framework has the different criteria that's important to the organization. And I spoke about those different stages where we're doing prioritization from problem through to validated solution. The criteria and the weighting against those criteria changes depending on what you're looking at, right? Yeah, so that's essentially how that's been taken into consideration, yeah. Now, the last thing to talk about here quickly as well, if you are going to be doing this, is whether you're a startup or working in an organization, someone's always going to say to you, hey, what's most important to me is, as your shareholder, I want profit. You go, cool, well, I built this feature, so therefore you got, and sales increased, therefore you got profit from feature X. It's never the case, especially in the case of PageUp, where we have a 6-month cycle time for sales. So from when we start a sales process to the time we land sales, it takes 6 months, right? So if I was going to go, well, I'm only going to choose to progress this feature if revenue increases. I'm going to wait 6 months to see if that happens and then try and tie it back. Totally doesn't work. So what we've got here is you've got your lagging indicators of revenue and cost, which correspond to profit, which obviously we're not going to use to measure the success of products, determine what we're going to take forward. And this is how we've used to communicate to the board and to the shareholders to show how our leading indicators then correspond through. So the example I've got here, we've got product innovation, could be feature X, whatever it is, an example leading indicator there. So you've got lots of different indicators you could use, like engagement, adoption rates, things like that. The one I've got here is task success. So that could be completion rate for task success or speed to complete, as well as your more rudimentary classical measurements such as complaints and feedback. These kinds of things I should be able to see on a weekly basis. So, and what you can see there is from there, they correspond. Assumably, I have my hypothesis and I meet my hypothesis around improving those specific measurements. I can infer that will improve customer satisfaction, corresponding to an improvement in retention, improvement in referrals, and then growth as a result. So every single time we pick up and epic, just like you do in a design sprint where you're going, okay, what is our hypothesis? What are we measuring? What metric is going to change? Every single time we pick up a new solution, one of the first things we do when we're breaking down the stories is we have stories around the metrics. What are the metrics that are going to move, and how are we going to measure those? And those are specific story cards that go up on the board, and they're one of the first things that we work on to ensure that every single time we deliver something out to market, as it hits the market, we're already measuring the success of what it's doing, and we know what's going to happen. If we get above a certain metric, what's our action that we're going to take? If we meet a certain metric, what's our action going to take? If we get below a certain metric, what's the action that we're going to take?
And that's always the standard, the quantifiable metrics from the starting point?
It's the standard to come up with what those metrics are. Those metrics will change per solution. They can be completely different. Yeah. Yes.
Was there any customer validation involved during pre-development stage?
Yeah, so you've got the customer research that's done initially to validate what the jobs are. And then we spoke about once I've got my unvalidated solution, that's when we're doing our experimentation. That experimentation is your initial customer validation. So that's the first stage of it. And then ideally you've nailed it. But then if you do get to where you've prioritized something for development, which could happen after a period of time, you still have that pre-development discovery stage again to do essentially additional experimentation or the risk use assumptions tests. Yeah.
How substantial does the increase has to be? How significant is that increase as you're measuring those metrics?
It depends.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So you'd be. Yeah, so it depends. It would depend on whatever the solution is and what metric you're looking at. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But again, that's why you always are determining what those metrics are and what that movement is up front. Because if you don't determine it up front, we're humans, we like to succeed. You'll just, it only moved by 1%. That's exactly what I wanted it to move by. Sure, it was successful. So what we covered today, so we got our transformation with strategy, people, and process, and then from the lead up to the transformation, which Latal spoke to, which was enabling alignment, autonomy, and elevating the research and experimentation. So with that, we want to leave a bit of time for questions and our learnings. So any questions from anyone?
I just wanted to say something to your question before with validation. Yeah. So we want to have interaction with customers as much as possible. So we do the initial research first to understand their jobs to be done. We do the experimentation to measure their behavior. But then when we decided on taking an initiative and actually building it, we will do usability tests as well, right? So once we go, we will do the design sprint when we already have an initiative that we know that we're going to build. We will run a design sprint, having a prototype that we can take out and test with our customer as well. So we're not just doing it at the end. We want to have interaction with customers all the time and as much as possible. And we are in a great point at the moment that basically we have 5 streams, and each one of our streams now is doing exploratory research. So Rowan is super busy because he needs to manage all of that. But that's awesome. So we have the UX designers and also product managers going out and speaking to people and asking them all the questions to identify the problems that we want to solve. Cool.
Just a really very straightforward question.
Yeah.
You characterize the process of really fitting into two groups, the kind of design experimentation piece and the development delivery piece. I'm always interested in the transition between those two phases and how you manage that transition properly so that you correctly convey the ethics of the design that is then going to be developed in a way that the developers actually have a way to copy code and deliver it. So I'm kind of interested in how you manage that.
I'll say my perspective first. Cool. Great question, Andrew. So one of the first steps that I didn't actually mention that I've done was to make sure that each one of our team has an embedded UX designer in their team. We still don't have enough UX designers, but each one of our streams know who are their UX designers. So most of the streams have a UX designer. They sit with the stream. Their team is their stream, is not the UX or design team. And they work really well together. So one of the changes, looking at people and strategy, collaboration is, for me, the number one key of success. So we want to make sure everyone is involved in each step of the way. So it doesn't mean if we have a team of 12 people, all the 12 people should be involved in that. But definitely during the ideation or the experimentation, we want to have at least one product manager, UXer, and a tech person, at least them, with extra people from marketing and sales and so on. They're also involved in the design solution. So design solution from a technical perspective, but also from a user perspective as well. So the teams are working really well together. And they make sure that the developers are really a huge part of the design solution, and they will give the feedback as soon as they can to what is feasible and what isn't. I nailed it. Any more questions?
What approaches, what ways do you use to get feedback from customers? Do you find any resistance sometimes? Because they don't have all the time to do testing and all those kind of things.
Yes. So we have a lot of engagement from our super users mainly. However, those people are not necessarily the people that are using the system. So we are now in the process of solving it and recruiting people to have ongoing activities with them. And we're pretty successful with that, right? Yeah. So we have interviews with people, and believe me, when you work in B2B and people have to use the system because this is part of their job, they will love to give you feedback. So they give a lot of feedback, good feedback, mainly negative feedback, and that's great because this is how we learn, right? We also have a user voice tool, which basically means that every user, whenever they want, they can give us feedback through this tool. And we get a lot of feedback, and then we can go back to those people, and it helps us with prioritization, first of all, and we can go back to those people and ask them the why behind, do we need that? Behind their feedback. Never mind. We also have what we call an alpha group. So we have a very early release with those group of people, around, I think, 200 people. And they also give us feedback a lot. So I think for us, B2B, and tell me if you have a different experience, B2B is completely different. People want to give you feedback all the time if they have.
Because usually companies would get feedback through a support system. Their customers will get tickets, something doesn't work, and but that's not the real feedback. And
we also use that as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But would you usually do meetings, or would you send surveys, or?
So we'll do everything, but for us as user researcher, we'll go and speak to individual people, one-on-one conversation. And when we do usability tests as well, it will be one-on-one conversation with, we'll use different groups of people all the time, depends on, the feature of the product or of the problems that we're trying to solve.
So I'll just add to that as well. A big part of that is what we're calling like contact time. So ensuring that it's not just the user researchers that are getting that contact time, it's everyone across the product development team have contact time that they need to get with customers. So whether that's coming along to sales meetings or attending user research sessions, or even just listening into user research sessions if it's possible. Yeah, so it's really important for us, everyone to build that empathy and everyone to have that insight.
Just want to ask how you manage all the data in the spaghetti code with your different stakeholders and how that changed, like the architecture of it all.
It's a work in progress.
It's still ongoing.
Yeah, we literally have projects right now working to manage that. Yeah, so it's an issue currently that we're trying to solve.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a question. How do you encourage knowledge sharing across the different value streams?
It's a good question. We're still working through how to make that work effectively. So part of it is through retrospectives. So running retros, it's very like You see a lot of retros run in organizations where people run the retrospective and then it's just the same thing gets rehashed a week later or a couple of weeks later. So for us, it's all about ensuring that retrospectives produce real actions which go into Jira. And then as people action those actions and they find them to be successful, it's then about sharing that with the wider organization. We actually do essentially, do we call it training Fridays or something? Or sharing, knowledge sharing Fridays, I think. So every Friday from essentially from about 11 o'clock in the morning until the end of the day is a series of workshop sessions where people have, we call them hour of powers or learning lunches and chapter meetings where it's constant learning from about 11 o'clock every single Friday until the end of the day where people are sharing these kinds of things.
Our UX chapter is the most successful now.
This is true.
When you're deciding on what solutions to go with or to experiment or others, do you also in that decision making involve subject matter experts, or is it just based on the end user researchers?
That's a good question. So in terms of if we're talking about, so there's the different stages of prioritization. If we're talking about the validated solution, yeah. So validated solution, I'll talk about from a generic perspective. So in general, when you're looking at what validated solution to progress, you're looking at, okay, is this going to help with growth and retention? Is this going to help with customer experience? What's the effort that's going to take to develop this? What's the size of the addressable market? Things like that are general kind of criteria that you might be looking at. What feeds into that is all sorts of things. So there's the user research, there's our sales data out of Salesforce. So are there existing customers? Are there new potential customers? There's the market insights and market research data that feeds into that in terms of the size of the addressable market. There's our competitor research. How many competitors are doing the same thing and are they successful with that feature and therefore should we potentially look at doing that? How many competitors are not doing this? Is it a unique offering that we should be looking at? So all these different data sources then feed into prioritizing effectively. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned earlier you go across and give workshops for them to implement it. So how do you make sure that they are implementing it globally in each region? Like, do you have like a way you track that the region that you just implemented or taught the workshop with, carried the workshop, and how do you make sure they're implementing that in their workspace?
Yeah, that's again a really good question. So our product teams are mainly here. We have 2 product teams in Manila, and there are 2 squads, and they are part of a stream. So we have 2 teams here and 2 teams in Manila. So they work very, very close together.
When you say stream, does it stay like?
Yeah, so a stream is built of squads. So stream is more kind of the high level. So for this stream, for example, the talent acquisition stream, there are 4 squads, 2 in Melbourne and 2 in Manila. So they have daily stand-ups, they have weekly cross-functional team meetings. Their senior product manager is here, and their senior tech lead is here as well. So they have daily conversation to ensure that they are implementing this new process. And they're awesome, by the way, they are definitely implementing that. With the rest of the region, so the US and Singapore, because they haven't done the training yet. That will be a really good question, but they are not part of our product development team. They are more salespeople and implementation and all of that. So we will need to work really close with them and to see, the value of their insights basically when they talk to customers. Yes, so if, for example, they go and talk, a pre-sales person, for example, go and talk to someone to understand their business process and their job to be done and their problem within the organization, we can support them in that. And then looking at the insights and giving them tips, right? So, well, we're not kind of forcing that on them. We're basically giving them a tool that will enable them to have better conversations with people. So hopefully, yeah, everyone will adopt it, but definitely that's a journey and, change takes time, so we shall see.
Yes, Aisha.
So while you're doing the brainstorming and the ideation phase, in case you guys do hit a roadblock, what do you do to get over it?
Never had this scenario of a roadblock. It's actually interesting because our way of ideation generates way too many ideas that then the teams need to prioritize. And if there is a roadblock, we need to go back and understand the definition of the problem statement, and maybe something is wrong with the problem statement if people can't come up with ideas. So our way of doing ideation is generate as many ideas as you can. We have kind of like a crazy round, we have an everything possible round. So we want to make sure that people are coming up, being super creative and coming up with their best ideas without any limitations. And that's why we have a few rounds, right? So don't think about, you know, the spaghetti code. I call it the monster. So don't think about the monster. It doesn't exist. Don't think about, you know, the fact that you need to sell it. Don't think about all those limitations. Think about what is the best idea to solve this problem. And it's really, really successful. So I never had the issue. Did you?
How would you think a difference might be if you were like a consultant going in to do UX into an
That's
a really good
organization?
question.
Okay.
So if you're a consultant going in to do something like this,
Doing some UX ideation and problem solving for another organization that you have.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
conveniently, that's what I did for the last 5 years. Yeah, it's really fun for a start. It's very easy. So the process itself lends it like it's always nice. So I'll talk about like the best approach as a consultant going in. Meet with the organization beforehand, depending on how much they want to invest. Let's say hypothetically it's the most difficult scenario where they're saying we're going to invest 4 hours. That's it, nothing more. You don't get anything more than that from us. We're not going to do any pre-work. Cool. Okay. So you meet with them. You go. At the very least, your pre-work's a half an hour session with them where you work through what is it that you want to focus on, what are the pain points that you have. You tell them ideally we need you to do this pre-work. Hopefully they do it. And they bring the research into the room with them, and then you use that to essentially drive the ideation. What I call like running like a mini design sprint, where you do basically you take that general problem, you break it down into all the smaller problems. It's like a whole bunch of different exercises you can do, and then run the ideation workshop off that. And it's always extremely successful. It's very, very easy to do. Ideally, they are willing to invest a bit more time, and you can actually maybe convince them to actually run a design sprint.
Sure.
In which case, the only pre-work they need to do, ideally, is to do the recruitment of the participants, obviously, and then also the candidates for interviewing.
So how do you find that if they have maybe biased participants giving you biased research and results in surveys that
which
done for 4 hours or whatever?
That's pretty much it. You've only got 4 hours. You ideally are trying to help them lead towards what seems like the best possible problem, because the ideation is always successful, right? Ideation's easy. Ideation's always successful. Like you called out, the hard part is have they picked the right problem in the first place? Even if they don't pick the right problem, ideally what you always end up teaching them is teaching that prioritization technique. And so of their ideation, ideally, they'll end up with good ideas anyway, right? Especially because you're giving them that level of freedom that they might get good ideas for their own problem.
Great.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, there's someone up the back.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask how the product management activities are daily when you work with such a UX strong team, because I think it's slightly different. She was saying before that before there was the product and the UX group was under the product. And now the change is that there is a UX and there's product on the same level. So I wanted to understand how the daily activities of a product manager changes from the standard beginning scenario to the moment in which you have a very strong UX team. I mean, how do you, because I suppose there are areas where you overlap almost now, because product manager as well ask a lot of whys and prioritization. So
I've tackled this one a lot. So the high level I would say is that product management and UX is a very, very tight Venn diagram, right? Yeah. I would say if you've got a lead product manager, I'd expect them to do most UX activities, if not all. If you've got a lead UXer, vice versa. I'd expect them to be able to do most product management activities, if not all, right? Where it sits is where is my, I call it where's my decision, who's the decision maker for various decisions, right? So an example of product management, they are the overall decision maker when it comes to prioritization. However, when it comes to understanding what score sits on the prioritization criteria, especially when it comes to things like customer and design, the UXer is the person that calls the shots there. The UXer can't, product manager, what you see in some organizations where the product manager thinks they're the boss, right? And the UXer comes up, I've done this research, it's come up with these insights, this is the most valuable job to be done for the customer. And the product manager, I disagree. You don't get to disagree. The UXer is the boss, right? When it comes to jobs to be done, UXer is the boss. When it comes to sales modeling, product manager is the boss, right? So that's, like, I can go into a lot more detail around it, but that's kind of like, where's the decision maker?
Just want to add something to that. So one of the feedback that I got from the unconference design sprint that Andrew and Elena ran a few weeks ago. So I had one of our product manager actually go in there, and he said, wow, everyone hates product managers. And I said, well, yes, if they're, assholes, and if they want to make all the decisions. However, we are very lucky that we don't have it. So Josh and I work really well together. And yes, sometimes we have conflicts and sometimes we don't agree with each other, but we can have a conversation and decide who is making the decision, as what Josh just said, who's responsible for what. So it's really, really important to define the roles and responsibilities of the different players. And yeah, UX and product management is very, very much overlapping. But as you could see, the process that Josh just took us through, we have who is responsible in each one of those steps. Yes, so research, experimentation, for example, that will be the responsibility of UXer. The business part of thing, go to market, prioritization will be product managers, and we have the tech leads as well. So to your question, it's really important to define that, when the team is just kind of coming together, or if you have an issue, definitely everyone needs to understand what is expected of them.
Yeah.
Anything else? Good? Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
So I think Elena wants to say a few words.
Just to wrap up, thanks everyone for coming. You can stay a little bit longer. They will kick us out whenever we have to leave the office. So just follow their instructions.
A lot of pizza, please eat the pizza.
And finally, if you have any feedback about this meetup or anything you can contribute with as part of the community, we have set up at the end, there's some post-it notes, so please write up, any comments, anything that was good, anything that we could improve for the next one, and anything you can contribute with. We're always open to new speakers. If you have any ideas of any talks, any experiences you want to share, or any skills or workshops you want to run, any ideas of things you would like to see in future meetups, even if you can't run those talks. So please feel free to contribute to that.
And I think that's probably about it. Just finally to say thanks to our hosts for the evening and our speakers. And we'll hope to see you at the next event that we actually run, which will probably be now in December. So thank you guys, and thanks again to these guys. Yes. Say it's a lot faster. Sorry. I gotta go. I'll talk to you in the next couple of Wow, none left. I love your question. I know exactly where you're coming from. Because I can see, it's my team. How do I get them to do what I tell
We're a great team.
Anyways,
Hanging out.
Yes.
Because I know what's in for today, and I'm like, I have so many ideas. I try to like today.
Yeah. And I will. Well, actually, Josh can tell you. He's in Sydney. Yeah, good. Finish the live stream.